Warning: this podcast may be disturbing to some listeners. Due to the graphic nature, listener discretion is advised. Welcome from wherever you are. This is the Demon Inside podcast. I am your host, John Benham. If you would like to review another episode of the Demon Inside, you can go to Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and any podcast platform. And please, don't forget to subscribe and rate us with 5 stars. A new episode will come out once a week. We will be right back after a word from our sponsors.
I have confession.
I'm sorry?
I have confession. I don't remember how I killed him.
You don't remember?
All I remember, I get up like I did, and I find him in a trash bag. I wish I knew how I killed him, though. Something inside me told me that I had to do it, like demons.
Hello, my Demon Insiders, and welcome back to the Demon Inside. I'm your host, John Benham, and today we will be doing the Demon Inside Omaime Aree Nelson. Now, Omaime has been described as the female Jeffrey Dahmer. She didn't kill as many as Jeffrey Dahmer did, but she did kill and eat her husband. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and start with her history. So Omaime was born and raised in Cairo, Egypt, and she was the daughter of a mom and dad who had 15 other kids. In 1968 was when she was born. So living in Egypt, her father, from the time that she was a little girl, was an emotional, abusive, and sexually assaulting Omaime. He did that with her, and he did that with his wife, and he did that with his other 2 female children. After a few years, Omaime's mom had enough, and they ended up moving, her and their 2 sisters, and they ended up living in an impoverished part of the city near a local necropolis. This necropolis makes up the City of the Dead, and it was developed over many centuries around graveyards. And these graveyards contain both the graves of Cairo's common population and as well as the elaborate mausoleums of many of its historical rulers and many of its historical elitists. But in the 19th and 20th century, the pressure of Cairo's intensive urbanization and its ensuing housing shortage led to a large increase in the number of people living in the necropolis zones. Some of these people, as Omaime's mom and her sisters, resorted to squatting within the mausoleums and tomb enclosures and turning them into improvised housing. So in 1986, Omaime immigrated to the United States following her marriage. She got married at 18 to an American citizen named Roger Steinbrook. Now, within the year, they had got divorced, and she was stuck in Southern California on her own at 19. She was working as a nanny, and she had a part-time job as a model. Now, these weren't exactly the jobs that would pay for her bills or anything, so what she realized was that working as a model, she was beautiful enough to start scamming men. And I believe that she had probably started this from way back, because when you're impoverished, you're probably learning how to steal for food, steal money, you're learning how to steal for clothes, things like of that nature. And that's what she was doing also here in the States, which she was stealing from thrift stores and convenience stores and things like that. As a matter of fact, they almost caught her, 2 security guards, and she bit one of them in the breast, and she tried to bite the other one in the crotch. And so she got arrested and was arrested for assault, and they gave her probation and she was released. Then she turned into this woman that would go into these bars at the age of 19, and these men would see her, and she would flirt with them, and she would dress real sexy, and she would bat her eyes and do her beautiful smile and things like that. And they would approach her, and she would ask them if they would like to go back to their hotel or apartment or whatever. And when these men would take her, they would take her back to wherever. She would tell them that she was going to give them sexual pleasure. Now, the way she did this was she would tie them up to the bed, but she would end up ripping them off. When she would rip them off, of course, these men were either married or businessmen or people that just were embarrassed that a woman got the best of them. So they wouldn't go to the police. So this was kind of a good scam for her, because she was able to do this time and time again without being caught or charged, because these men were either afraid that their wives would find out, or they were afraid that the police would make fun of them because they were getting tricked. And so they never reported these crimes. But in October of 1991, she was 23 years old. She met William Edwin Nelson. Now, his name was, they called him Bill. And while playing pool at a bar in Huntington Beach, Bill was 56 years old at the time. And he was a pilot in Laredo, Texas, and lived in Costa Mesa as a computer programmer. And having been released that same year, after serving 4 years in prison for attempting to smuggle 100 tons of marijuana from Mexico through his job flying the plane, he had got out, and within that time went to the bar, met Omaime, and within 2 days, he proposed to her. And of course, she said yes. And Bill was a very flashy kind of guy. Bill liked to show off his money. So this was perfect for her. According to John Fitzgibbon Sr., who was Bill Nelson's attorney, and had met the couple during their honeymoon in Laredo on November 3rd, the pair claimed to have married in an Egyptian ceremony in either Vegas or Phoenix on November 1st. But neither city had records of their marriage. And not only that, but Bill was still married to Kathy Nelson. There was no divorce yet. The validity of their marriage claim comes into question. But Bill actually takes Omaime to meet his family. For whatever reason, I guess maybe they were separated and the family had no problem with this. The only problem they had was that Omaime was so young for him. And they kind of thought that she was there for the money, which was probably true. But after a while, some of the members of his family actually ended up liking her. And this is November 28th of 1991. And Omaime and Bill are going to have Thanksgiving dinner. Now, this is early in the day, so Bill calls his daughter and invites her to come over for Thanksgiving dinner. Well, she declines, and him and Omaime are at the house alone when sometime that day, she posed sexually explicit pictures for Bill. She posed in bed for him, and he took the pictures. Now, at the time of the pictures, it looked like Omaime was fine, because later on, she claims that same day, Bill abused her. But we're going to get into that here in a minute. So on the day of Thanksgiving, and I want to give you a warning because what she does is very gruesome. And I can't tell you enough. If you have a weak stomach and do not want to hear this, I would skip the rest of this and probably go closer to the end. So Omaime decides to tie Bill up to the bed. And remember, she would do this whenever she was trying to gain control of these men to rip them off. Well, she's not going to rip off Bill because he's her husband, but she decides to kill him. She ties him up. She hits him over the head several times with a lamp. And then she stabs him several times. Now, she castrates him while he's still alive. She cuts off his hands. She cuts off his legs. She cuts off his head. She skins him, his body. She deep fries his head like you would deep fry a turkey. She cooks pieces of his hip with the turkey and then throws it out into the garbage can with the dressing and mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce. She also takes his torso and puts it above the tub. Now, what I imagined is in third world countries, a lot of these men or a lot of these women, they sell meat in these third world countries and they hang them up to sell. So I was trying to figure that out. And then my cousin brought up something. My cousin Sue brought up something that really kind of fascinated me too, where she said that it sounded like Elizabeth Bathory. Now, Elizabeth Bathory she was born in August 7th of 1560, and she died August 21st of 1614. Now, this Countess Elizabeth was actually a Hungarian noblewoman, and she was a serial killer who would bathe in the blood of girls and women. So I think that Omaime put her husband's torso above the tub so that she could take a bath in his blood. And I'm going to tell you why. I believe because Omaime says that she started to hear voices on Thanksgiving, that they started telling her that she had to kill Bill. And if she didn't kill Bill, that Bill was going to kill her. Then she saw two women covered in blood. She related to a goddess named Sekhmet, whose name, and listen to this, whose name means she who is powerful. This was the goddess of the hot desert sun, the plague, chaos, war, and healing. She was created from the fire of the sun god Ra. And when he looked upon earth, Ra created her as a weapon to destroy humans for their disobedience to him. Now, why do I say that it was Sekhmet? Because Sekhmet, she said, now this was Omaime. Omaime said that she put on red shoes, she put on red lipstick, and she said that she had the goddess inside of her of red, and people have portrayed Sekhmet in red because of her desire for blood. So could it have been that she covered herself in blood, put on her red high heels and her red lipstick, and then began to eat him? Now, as far-fetched as that sounds, I really wish it was. This lady started to, and from the neighbors' point of view, they heard the drainage. They heard all night that this garbage disposal was going on. Let me explain something to you guys. November 28th was Thanksgiving Thursday. Nobody heard or saw her. The neighbors heard the disposal going on all weekend. And she didn't come out and talk to a friend until December 2nd. So we're talking the 28th, 29th, 30th, 1st, and 2nd. We're talking almost 5 days go by that nobody has heard from her or seen her. The last time anybody talked to Bill was when his daughter talked to her over the phone on Thanksgiving morning. So this woman was in the apartment for almost 5 days, and she had his body parts all over the place. During that time, she started aligning suitcases with plastic bags, and she started putting his organs in there, and his heart and his lungs. She started covering, things here and there, but it was too much for her. Now she says, and she tells the police, that she doesn't remember anything. She doesn't remember how Bill got killed. She doesn't remember how he got into the bags. She doesn't remember anything. Little by little, she starts opening up and saying about the two women covered in blood that talked to her. She starts talking about the deity. She starts talking about, hearing demon voices and things like that. When she comes on December 2nd to her friend's house, who she hadn't seen in years, but this was one of the guys that she dated. And she went to his house, knocked on the door. He opened the door. And she said, "Could you help me? My husband tried to assault me. Well, he did assault me. He hit me. He beat me. He made me feel threatened. And I thought he was going to kill me. Can you help me get rid of his body? Because I had to kill him." Now, this guy was kind of confused, but he wasn't dumb. She offered him $75,000 and 2 motorcycles to help her. He said, "You know what? I will help you." And she thought that he would do that because she was so beautiful. And she probably thought she had control over this guy. He told her, "Go ahead and go back to your apartment and wait for me. I'm going to get my truck. I'm going to get some things, and I will meet you there." Instead, after she left, he called the police, told them. So before she gets to the apartment, the police see her car because it's a red Corvette that Bill owned. And it stood out, completely back in 1991. They pull her over. They start talking to her. They see the suitcase. They ask her if they can look in it. She says yes. They open it up. And there inside is Bill's lungs and some of his intestines. Well, they know right away it's a person, but they don't know who it belongs to. One of the detectives that shows up on site sees the lungs and sees that there's little patches of brown or something like that on the lungs. And he says, "That's how you get patches on there when you're a smoker." And Bill was a big smoker. So they assumed this was Bill's body. So they get a warrant. They arrest Omaime. They go to the apartment and they find his body pretty much everywhere. They find blood on the bed. They find his torso hanging. They find his head that has been deep fried and put in the freezer. They find his hands still cooking in the deep fryer. Both his hands are in the deep fryer cooking. There's blood throughout the whole apartment, and this is probably one of the worst crime scenes they've ever seen. When they gather everything up and they take it back to the coroner, they end up finding out that there is 180 pounds of Bill still missing. 180 pounds of him is still missing. She goes and tells her psychiatrist that his ribs, she cooked his ribs and said that she put barbecue sauce on them and ate his ribs and that they were the sweetest she had ever tasted. After she tells the psychiatrist about eating Bill's ribs, she makes it sound exactly like she had done this before. Now, the coroner that was studying Bill's body said that whoever took Bill apart had done this a lot of times, over and over again. Repetition was the only way that this person could have done this. Now, Omaime had never been convicted of any crime like that. Omaime supposedly had never killed anybody. Could she have killed when she was in Egypt, in that impoverished part of town that she lived? Maybe she could have. Yeah, maybe they didn't catch on. But she had killed so many times, according to the coroner, that killing Bill looked like somebody that was professionally known to have done this to other people. You can't cut somebody up like a professional unless you've done this over and over and over again. Now, at the time, Omaime was 23 years old. My belief is this demon, over many thousands of years, why couldn't this demon cut this guy up into pieces through Omaime and it looked professionally done? In other words, I don't think a 23-year-old would know how to cut a body up like this unless they had been doing this for years and years and years. Now, could it have been this deity that I'm talking about, Sekhmet? It could have. Could this have been a demon that we've talked about before that wants to pretend to be a deity? Because I believe, like I said before, sometimes our belief in deities, our belief in gods, different gods, might not be a real god. It might be a demon. And these demons feed off of that. A succubus, which is a female demon that kills males. So could this have been a succubus? Yes, it could have been. Whatever this was a demon that decided to cut up this man, bathe in his blood, and have this woman eat her husband over the span of 5 days. And now she is actually in prison under second-degree murder charges, not first, second, because she started saying that Bill was abusive. Let me explain something to you guys. For me, if you're a male who is a violent person and you beat your wife, there is no way in hell that you would ever let your wife tie you up in bed to where you have no control. A person like that, a macho man, so to speak, and I'm doing air quotes, will never let a woman tie him up where he has no control. It would be the other way around. You're not going to get a serial killer that's going to let you tie him up so that you could do things to him. So if Bill had been this abusive guy, he would have never let her tie him up. Also, his ex-wife never ever said anything about Bill, that he was abusive or he was domineering or anything that Omaime said. This was a woman that got this man within 2 days to marry him, and they were married for like 2 months before she killed him and ate him. For me, this was a demon that got into her ear, or maybe got into her body, but she believed that she was the deity Sekhmet, who was this powerful female who dressed in red and killed her enemies and killed men. This was a woman that wanted blood and ate her husband. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll talk to y'all next week.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Demon Inside podcast on any podcast platform. A new episode of the Demon Inside will be released every week. Let us know what you think of the episode on all our social media platforms. If you have any questions or comments, go to the Demon Inside podcast at gmail.com or click on the link down below. We would love to hear from you. And to become a Demon Insider, go to our website, thedemoninsidepodcast.com. We thank you for listening and hope you will join us next week for a new Demon Inside podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell your friends. I am John Venom, and I'll see you next time, if I don't get possessed. The Demon Inside was written and created by James Porter. It is a production of Venomous Entertainment. Background music is by Lucas King, and the title song Demon Inside was produced by Rice Fulber, composer lyricist Peter Shelley, and performed by Conjure One.